Well, hello everybody. How is it going? Welcome. It is November 20th, 2024. I don't think any of us expected to be here, right? But here we are. And this is a RambleCast. I'm your host, Cody Toombs, and with me I have Corbin Davenport.
Hello.
So, wow, it's been a week of weather. There's some there's some technology stuff. Wait, what in the world? Why is uh oh, this is weird. The one spot I didn't. Oh, that's fine. I'm a pro at this. Um I switched the wrong view for a second. Or I didn't switch it to live, but I was about to switch to it. And it's like, "Wait, where's Corbin?" Duh.
Oh,
I
yeah,
switched to the wrong
I'm
one that
over.
doesn't
I'm
have a
over
Corbin.
here. Oh, your help. No, it's been raining on and off for the last 2 days, so it's pretty soggy outside.
Oh, I am I am in what I believe they call a bomb cyclone.
Oh, that
So
sounds unpleasant.
it's just rain with, I guess, some wind. I admit I have slept through most of the windy moments, but yeah, apparently there's a lot of wind. Um, and otherwise, it's rain like not 24/7, but close enough that I can't go outside to do any drone reviews. Which coincidentally, I happen to have two drones that I need to review, so that that's fun. Um, the cyclone is staying offshore. Boo, bro. That is some living in the city kind of nonsense. You live in the country where a lot of trees are going to fall in roads. You do not want. You do not want. Just that's all I can say. You do not want. Um,
Yeah, that's also Raleigh. Like anytime it's like a little bit windy, like a million trees fall over, and they all fall over on the power lines, and that is the experience of living here.
yeah.
Hoopy said, "Nah, it's oh, it's perfect time to test a drone." Yeah, Cody should be like the weather, like the NOAA guys that like fly their helicopters into storms.
Um, you know, I that sounds terrible, but I will say I'm suddenly picturing a YouTube channel kind of like Jerry Jerry Rig Everything, where I just intentionally break expensive technology. And the idea of putting a drone up in the middle of the windiest, worst conditions sounds kind of epic.
Yeah, I mean, drone probably won't survive, but like, hey, it's streaming the video, right?
Yeah,
Maybe you can find that SD card somewhere on the ground like this. You can get some content out of it.
yeah, that would be pretty epic.
Yeah, and speaking of uh, finding SD cards on the ground
By the way,
with media.
I just to be clear, that SD card will 100% be named Nemo.
Okay, yeah.
It's
Speaking of
required.
speaking of that, Comcast announced today that it wants to split off its media business. So Comcast, I don't think most people think about this because Comcast uses like a bunch of different brand names. But Comcast owns NBC Universal, and then also obviously Xfinity. Um, so they have been doing what AT&T was doing a decade ago, where they had their internet business and but also like a media empire, and they've been kind of using those to grow each other. But now I guess Comcast has decided it doesn't want to do that anymore. They want to split off. They want to create a new publicly traded company comprised of a strong portfolio of NBC's cable television networks, including USA, CNBC, NBC, Oxygen, eSci-Fi and Golf Channel, along with complementary digital assets, including Fandango and Rotten Tomatoes. I didn't know they owned both of those. That's good. Um, so I guess not their movie studios, so not like Universal the movie studios, but a lot of the other stuff. Um, yeah. So that's kind of what's going on. Again, pretty similar to what AT&T did, where they bought, I guess it was Time Warner at the time,
Yeah.
and it was Warner Bros. Under AT&T for a while, and then they were like, "Oh, we bought way too much stuff. We need to downscale." So then they sold that part off to Discovery. So they're not in that business anymore. So this doesn't like I don't think this will like really matter all that much for normal people. This is just like corporate merger consolidation split off stuff. I would say if there's going to be an effect, it's probably going to be a lot of the Comcast bundling stuff might change. So like I remember when Peacock was new, basically every Xfinity customer got that for free because at the time they just kind of wanted big subscriber numbers more than they necessarily needed to make money. So maybe some stuff like that will go away. That's probably it. But I don't know if I guess this doesn't include Peacock because they're just talking about the TV networks or cable TV. And yeah, so
Yeah, Peacock is definitely still a thing.
it is.
I believe it or not, if you were a loyal reader of my weekly TV and movie streaming recommendations, don't worry about it. Yeah, Peacock has been featured at least, I think, at least once, maybe twice.
Yeah.
It
My
doesn't come up a lot.
understanding
But
is yeah, my understanding is that they're doing pretty well in like the live sports stuff. Um, so if you're one of those people, which I am not, Peacock is kind of a good subscription to have. And also, they just that was the place to watch all of the Olympic stuff a couple months ago, because NBC has it. Well, actually, that's a good. I guess are they splitting off? It sounds like they're keeping NBC. I guess that would be my question because NBC has the U.S. broadcast rights for the Olympics locked in for like 2 more decades. So that's good for them. Yeah, I guess I don't see NBC in the list. That's weird. So they're only splitting off TV, but not even all of the TV stuff. They're keeping the main NBC channel. Huh. Weird. There's the fact that it's only some of the cable channels makes me think maybe this is just like they don't want to deal with some regulatory stuff because I know there is weird laws with like companies are only allowed to own so many TV networks. Like that's a like I don't know what exactly that rule is.
it's also possible that maybe what they're trying to do is pick up specific subsections of the business because that's what they want, and the rest of it they're trying to cordon off ahead of a sale.
That's very possible.
Or this could be one of those this could be a bit of one of those like shell game moments where they picked up a bunch of stuff with the specific intention of selling it, and maybe they already have a buyer lined up, and so they're segregating things now so that in 6 months to a year or whatever they can just do the sell-off that they already know there is coming. Which, honestly, I've always suspected that's what AT&T was actually doing when they did the Time Warner deal. Because that was so short-lived. I mean, it was there long enough that they started bundling HBO Max. And less than a rebrand later, they were already getting rid of it. So, yeah.
Yeah. So it's not the main NBC channel. I was looking at another article from Variety, which I keep forgetting Variety's like really garbage outside of like specifically movie news. um, but they were bringing up the point that like NBC and MSNBC and CNBC all like share a lot of resources, and that would probably stop if like half of them go to a different company. So that's gonna be fun for them.
Yeah, but they're already spending all those resources on the alphabet soup that is all those names.
Hmm.
Do you know how long it takes for their interns to type those extra letters?
Yeah, maybe they can give MSNBC a good name.
Man, the time lost to people's lives with those extra letters.
It is really funny. Like the like media conglomerate names get so messy because of all of these sell-offs and mergers. Like we had Warner Bros, and then they merged with Time, and then became Time Warner, and then I think AOL bought them, or AOL's parents, and then they were like AOL Time Warner, and then and then they became I don't know what the next one was. I think that was AT&T. So just I think at that point they were just like Warner, like it was Warner under AT&T, and then now they're Warner Bros. Discovery. What a fun game.
Yes, which actually does get shortened to WBD, which just awkward.
Yeah, it's pretty gross. This is a lot like I know there's a couple good articles about this already, but I definitely want to write this at some point. But this is very similar to like user agent strings in web browsers, where they can't ever like remove like words, because then like half the web breaks, so they just keep adding stuff. It's like when you check your user agent string in Chrome, it's like Mozilla, because they can't ever take it out because some websites built 20 years ago are looking for that specific word there.
Mm-hmm.
Good times.
Awesome saying, seems pretty obvious AT&T is just clueless too. How much did DirecTV cost them? I'm gonna throw in a spicy take. DirecTV, the greatest cost of DirecTV was not the amount that they paid. The greatest cost is the fact that they then tried to get their sales agents to also push DirecTV when people are getting cell phones, or well, cellular lines.
Yeah.
Because oh my god, watching sales reps as they go from, hey, here's a phone, to, yeah, you want this DirecTV crap? Like, you can tell they just do not want anything to do with it.
Yeah, I wasn't like a conscious adult when that happened, but my vague memory of this is that they never really like integrated DirecTV. Like, it was always like this weird like offshoot thing, and then of course they didn't do that, and then cable TV like when they bought that was kind of like around the time when cable TV started disintegrating. Well, not, it's not cable, it's satellite, but it's the same difference.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, now they're trying to sell they spun off most of DirecTV, and now DirecTV is trying to sell itself to Dish, the new Dish company, EchoStar. So that's how that's going.
Uh,
It's good times.
yeah. Well, also having a good time these days is Amazon. And not just because, yes, I'm totally transitioning out of this. Um, but not just because Amazon is, uh, what? We're 3 weeks, is it even 3 weeks past a Prime Day? 2 weeks? I don't know, whatever it is. And we've
I
got
think
Black Friday coming.
Black, yeah, Black Friday's next week.
And more importantly, for this moment, Amazon Haul is coming.
Yeah, so this has been rumored for a while that major retailers in the U.S. would try to compete with Temu and Shin. I guess
Shein.
that's how it's pronounced. Shein. Okay. Basically, like they wanted some kind of answer for everyone flocking to Temu for cheap garbage. So now they have their own website on, is it amazon.com/so-low/store. It's also just if you Google Amazon Haul. And it's a mobile only experience. So I can't actually open it on my computer. That's good. Good start. But it's kind of just a lot of the same stuff you'd see on Temu. A lot of like weird clothes, a lot of cheap accessories and electronics, that kind of stuff.
Anything that can be made for under $1 and sold for a few bucks.
Yeah, like definitely all the same stuff that is the same factory is making the low cost stuff for Temu, the low cost stuff for Amazon, and also the high cost stuff you'd see if you walked into like a Best Buy.
Yes.
That's just like $30 more and has the Best Buy logo on it.
And when you say factory, I want to be clear. The same sweatshop employees are doing
Right.
this.
The same 11-year-old in Malaysia for sure. So sorry, I read like half of this and then I had to go do something else, but
That's okay. I
don't
didn't read any of it.
I don't think there's really like anything else. It's just this is their attempt to cash into that, and I guess my understanding is that it's more just like a lot of these items are probably already on the Amazon storefront. This is just a different UI for that, which would make sense. But yeah, so
yeah, they have a few
place to get
different
your cheap garbage.
policies. There are a few different rules for, well, when I say different, this is both different from what Temu does and also different from how Amazon treats its other, or oh, now that I've started saying it, it's hard to finish how to say this. Basically, there are a few different policies and rules for anyone or any company that's going to sell through the Haul interface. It basically, they have to meet certain shipping rules. They have to have certain price limits, which is a really weird choice, but I guess it makes sense. And this is all previously rumored stuff, like, or well, not even rumored. It was known. Like several of the manufacturers just openly said, "Oh yeah, we're going into Amazon's Temu competitor, and they're making us." They're setting limits on how much we can charge for, say, jewelry. There's limits on how much we can charge for certain clothing items, etc., etc. So yeah, that's what this is. It's a knockoff. The same way that every internet company knocked off what was it, Snapchat
Stories.
Was it called Stories? Okay.
Yeah.
I can never remember what everyone called every feature. But yeah, the same way everyone knocked off Snapchat, Amazon's knocking off Temu.
Right, and just like how every single app became TikTok.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I don't know. Like the thing about Amazon is like besides all the like business side stuff that's horrific, like all their warehouses being a safety nightmare, how they treat employees, how they you know, kind of pit sellers against each other, all that stuff. So like putting all that aside, which is more valid than what I'm about to say, Amazon does have an issue of their website fucking sucks. It sucks. I hate it. Like it is so difficult to find anything. And part of that is like the same thing that like app stores do now, where if you try to search for something, you're immediately overflowed with targeted ads for that search query. To the point where I wrote an article on How to Geek recently that was just like how to find things on Amazon with the search. And one of my top suggestions was like go to Google and search for what you want and put site amazon.com. And that is an immensely better experience than what Amazon presents to users.
Yeah.
So it doesn't surprise me that they made that this is kind of just like a different front end for the same database, because their front end is like is like a really big problem. And if they wanted to steal back some business, maybe they could try making that better. But then they lose out on sellers paying for ads for their own product on their own searches, so they won't do that. Same reason Apple lets app devs put sponsored results in app searches. Like when I searched for Mastodon the other day, the first result in the App Store search was Rumble, the like conservative video streaming thing. It used to be Truth Social, so that's like a 5% improvement. I don't know. Rumble's pretty bad, but I don't know if it's as bad as Truth.
Was Rumble the one that's actually using Mastodon software, but they're not allowed to use the name?
No, that's Truth. That was Truth Social.
No,
Rumble
there
is
was definitely one other before Truth Social did it.
Oh yeah. It was Truth and Gab.
Gab, yes. Okay.
And then Gab tried to federate, and then like every server immediately blocked it. No, Rumble is the one that is like the conservative Twitch YouTube clone that inflates view numbers to make everyone look like they're doing better than they actually are.
So exactly like Twitter.
Yeah, it's almost like there's a trend here. Wait a minute, I thought conservative media was really popular. If it was really popular and everyone liked your opinions, why do you need to inflate your popularity count? Riddle me this, Batman.
Also, why is it if Twitter's having the best engagement and increased usage, how is it that advertisers aren't jumping on that? And why did they stop revealing their usage numbers, the ones that they actually have to legally report? Why did those go away again? Just curious.
And also, why are conservatives signing up for Blue Sky? I thought X was the everything app. I thought that's where all the conversations were happening and where everyone important hangs out. That's weird. Why would you guys want to go somewhere else?
They're just there to own the libs.
Must be.
Oh,
Speaking of
boy.
owning the libs, Game Pass.
Oh, jeez. If
I
no
mean,
one could tell, our hearts are just so in this.
I mean, I guess. Well, this does have Hogwarts Legacy in it, so. Yeah, that is in there. Anyway, so kind of big news thing happened today is the Xbox Cloud streaming, which I guess this is what Microsoft calls this. I wasn't sure what that name at this point was. Xbox Cloud Gaming finally lets you stream games that you own but are not on the Game Pass subscription service. So before now, You could only stream games that are currently on Game Pass. It didn't work for games you bought elsewhere and weren't on the service. It didn't work for games that were on Game Pass at one point and then went away. Um, but now they are starting to roll out support for streaming games that are in your digital library for you to stream that might not necessarily be on Game Pass. So they've got like Assassin's Creed Mirage, they've got Baldur's Gate 3 is a big one, they've got Cyberpunk, they've got a couple of Final Fantasy games, they've got Star Wars Outlaws. It's 50 games in total right now. They say they're going to keep expanding that. Basically, this now makes it a lot more like NVIDIA GeForce Now, where the focus there has been, you already paid for all these games, here's the subscription for you to stream them on our servers whenever you want. But in GeForce Now is up to like hundreds of games, and this is at 50 right now, so there's a big gap there. And also, this is still it's still Xbox Cloud Gaming. This is still like server racks of Xboxes that run the Xbox version of the game. So very few games supporting like keyboard and mouse. Your graphics quality is going to be limited in some cases, because I think I have to imagine they still, like when they started this, they were on the Xbox One gen, and they have updated their servers. So like when you go to stream a game that only works on like Xbox Series X or S, it's obviously going to stream from one of those consoles in a server farm somewhere. But it wouldn't surprise me if they still have like a bunch of the old Xbox One racks that they will fire up whenever you want to play like an old game or something. Hoopy said, I thought Corbin was going to say up to hundreds of users. I mean, maybe.
Honestly, I was thinking the same thing. Maybe, I heard you say that, and just in my head it clicked, users, and then you finish the sentence with games, and it's like, oh yeah, that makes more sense.
No, I know it's a lot of games because they email me like almost every week to say, hey, we added more games. But every time I see those emails, I'm like, if I wrote this, it would get 7 views on How To. Every time I've ever tried to write about cloud gaming at How To Geek, no one cares. It is like, it is a consistent pattern.
Fun fact, just little fun fact. Based on the views that we got every time we wrote about Stadia, yeah, no one has ever cared about cloud gaming ever. It is the poison pill to the news cycle.
Yeah, which is annoying sometimes, because I do like using it occasionally, but it is just like no one in my audience reach cares.
Okay, so actually, I'm going to slightly augment how we talk about this, and or at least give my theory. I think there are plenty of people who like and care about cloud gaming, or at least use it. I think just no one cares to read about it. I think there's no version of news where everyone's going to go, oh my god, this is super cool and I need to read about it. They see a headline and are like, okay, I can extrapolate everything I need. I'm done. Like, I don't need to click through. I don't need to read this. Because all I'm going to do is open up the cloud gaming service tomorrow, and if it tells me that I can do something new, I'll do it then.
Yeah, I could buy that from the perspective of, like, it's just like a service. So it's kind of in the same vein as writing about, like, a new thing that Amazon Prime includes. Like, it's not a box you're getting excited for, you know. It's just like, oh, it's games somewhere in the cloud.
Honestly, I think even the Prime thing would be a bigger news item.
Yeah, because people actually use Amazon Prime.
Well, and because Amazon is really bad about making sure people see some of the more worthwhile features. Yeah. I could really see a version of that where people would look at it and go, you know what? I need to hunt down the thing. Like, I would have to start with Google and search for said thing, or I'd have to go looking through Amazon specific like menus in order to find that thing that they're starting up that's actually worth doing. Because man,
Yeah.
a lot of that stuff gets buried.
And I don't have any evidence to support this, but I would guess that maybe some of the interest in these is coming from people that are just not in the like gaming discourse, right? It's just like, oh, this is on my smart TV, let me check it out, like that kind of thing. Because we all know, like, the quote unquote gamers overwhelmingly don't like this stuff. Like, they didn't like Stadia. I think this the Xbox One hasn't quite got the amount of hate that like Stadia did, because it's just like an add-on for a different service. But this is definitely one of those topics that is, it's hard to like actually discuss without gamers getting really upset. Like women or women in their games, they also get upset about that. Or just women in general, probably. Hoopy said, my mom actually really liked playing Monopoly on Stadia on her bedroom TV in the evenings. Yeah, like I can totally. That would be my assumption, is that a lot of the user base for these are like just people who are like, I don't really care enough to figure out the box, or I don't really want to do that. Just I'll give you $10. Let me play my game.
Yeah. Now I might get a little judgy about playing Monopoly, but 100%. Look, we've had this. I don't know how many times we've had or said this, and I don't think we even need to anymore. But you know, consoles are still popular for a reason. People still choose them over PC gaming for reasons. And it's not just the exclusive games. Sometimes it's separation of concerns. Sometimes it's about having the ecosystem that just is designed for like a targeted purpose. And sometimes it's, well, there are assortment of other reasons. Once you buy into the idea that some people want to do their gaming on a console, it's a short step to some people don't even really care that it's a console. They're just happy with the idea of whatever little device can achieve gaming. And if it's a streaming solution, that works too. So yeah, it just makes sense that it should be a thing. It's just not always interesting.
I had a Monopoly game on my iPod Nano. There was an iPod game of Monopoly that was surprisingly good, in terms of like it being a full complete version of Monopoly, but on a screen that was like this big. uh, it wasn't, maybe the most pleasant thing to play on a click wheel, but it did work
On a click wheel.
Yeah. Speaking of Apple.
Oh, yeah, I guess that is a transition.
There was a fun little tidbit came out about the new M4 Macs, which is that they cannot virtualize old Mac OS versions. So this comes from Eclectic Light blog. They pointed out that running a Mac OS VM for any version before 13.4 Ventura on an M4 Mac results in a black screen and the VM fails to boot. And they speculate that there's a bug in the early kernel boot phase, somewhere in the bootloader. And they also mentioned that Apple doesn't really update old macOS versions like this. Like they have a history of like fixing security vulnerabilities and stuff that pops up, but they don't do these kind of lower level changes to old versions. So if you buy an M4 Mac, you just like this is a bug that like Apple could fix. I'm putting the odds on them fixing this as extremely low. I don't think they'll do this because Apple really. It's funny where Apple like really visibly doesn't care about keeping old macOS versions accessible. Getting macOS like a somewhat recent version of macOS that was still supported on my Mac Mini back here was like one of the hardest things I've done this year. Like Apple doesn't care. I was having so many issues where some versions had disk like there was like one version of macOS from ages ago that had like an actual disk image I could just write to a USB drive, like Windows and Linux and everyone else does. But when at some point Apple switched to distributing macOS updates as apps on the App Store, and you need to run a command in the terminal with a hidden executable in that app to make install me. Who's calling me? I don't know who that is. Okay, it's annoying. So, what was I saying? Oh yeah, so with a lot of macOS versions, you have to run an executable in the app package to make a USB, like a bootable USB of the Mac version, because the app is intended for you to do like an in-place upgrade, but that doesn't help me when I'm trying to do a fresh install. And oh, by the way, remember when Apple did that change where you can't run apps that aren't like signed? Well, guess what? All those installers aren't signed. You get errors if you try to run them. You can maybe get around some of them, but probably not. Also, guess what? A lot of those apps are 32-bit executables. And guess what? Apple doesn't support anymore. Oops. So Apple doesn't care about like keeping those older versions accessible, which is a problem when it makes other things that are reliant on specific macOS versions. Like if you want an older version of Xcode, guess what? You better have an old Mac with an old macOS version too, or you're shit out of luck. And that's so like you're just this is a whole thing that Apple has a history of fucking up. So I don't think they'll fix this. Hope you don't need to use like an old Xcode version or something on an M4 Mac because it's not happening. Sorry.
I would argue there is another way they could fix this, and it would be with most likely some kind of not a kernel update, but I almost want to say something sort of like oh, what was that translation layer that they were using for x86 to ARM? I always forget the name of it. What'd you say?
Rosetta.
Yeah. They could probably do something sort of like Rosetta for VMs. Basically, as soon as you try to run a VM, which is, on any reasonably modern processor, the way software typically works is it's actually taking advantage of some features built into the processors to run virtual machines. So anytime you run a virtual machine that tries to trigger something, it could very likely detect that and say, oh, we see you're doing this. We're going to go download a package and run this, and it'll make things work. And in all likelihood, it would just add some sort of basic simulation or I don't know what. I don't know well enough how this is implemented, but I imagine it is probably doable if without augmenting the older versions of macOS by just running a new thing that works around the bug.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's definitely possible because this is how x86 works. Like, you run VirtualBox on a PC, doesn't really matter what the host OS is. It doesn't care. it's emulating a whole like BIOS in there. It doesn't care. But because ARM is weirder, and specifically Apple's architecture it is built on top of ARM is weird. There's all these extra issues, and like just on top of Apple, generally not wanting to do backwards compatibility at all. Again, just like long history of doing that. I'm I'm still like wondering a little bit when they're gonna rip out Rosetta. I feel like they should just never do that because the rest of the computer ecosystem is still on x86, and that being in there makes intercompatibility a lot easier. But I don't know, maybe they'll do it. But yeah, now the funny thing is that if you have an x86 PC, all these old versions of macOS, guess what? You can still Hackintosh them and put them in a VM or another PC. So you can't run old macOS versions virtualized on your new Mac, but you can do it on a new PC, just not as well.
Yeah. Which, hey, there is value to this. It's not like these things are necessarily dead or useless. Obviously, some versions of hardware only even support up to certain versions of the OS, and some developers would like to actually keep supporting those. And in some instances, there are complications, even if you're trying to like build apps that target older versions. You can run into some weird complications. Anybody who has built anything for macOS, like actually built anything in Xcode targeting older versions of macOS, you've been through eventually the headaches of what happens when you target old enough versions of the OS. Things get weird. Things get really, really weird. So, yeah, this is a thing that needs to be available. But at the same time, it's Apple. Like I said, I think they could fix this with some sort of software solution. I don't think they want to. Exactly what you were saying. This is Apple. This is a company that, if you're not on the latest hardware or very recent hardware, and very recent software, you've been left behind. They do not want you.
And they could do so much more than they're doing right now, but they won't. I remember this must have been like around 2010 or something, but I remember for the longest time, Apple had some hidden web page on their website, like some hidden directory, where you could download a ton of old macOS versions for free. They had like old macOS versions. They had like update packages for those versions. They had like updates for a lot of like box software. So like if you just had like an old Mac or something you needed to fix, like all that stuff was there. And then of course that went away at some point. And now like trying to install like a 5-year-old version of macOS on a Mac Mini is the hardest thing I've done this year. Like it's just not happening.
It's kind of funny. I can't think of any company that spends more time talking about their legacies and the history of all their products and 10 years ago and 20 years ago we released this thing and it was special and amazing. Meanwhile, they're also the company that's like, oh yeah, don't ask about ever running that stuff again. It's not a thing we're interested in. It should die. We kind of actually hope it dies faster than it does. By the way, have you updated to the latest patch? Have you? If you haven't, you got. Look, we're looking at our watch. That patch came out 6 hours ago. Why haven't you updated? We're mad. We're gonna give you a swat on the ass if you don't update like now.
Also, we're still gonna put like cute references to our old computers in all our videos, but
Yes.
if you have one of those, you can just die. Uh,
Yeah.
go find the floppy images somewhere else, buddy.
Yeah. And
They are very much the Nintendo of computers
oh,
in many
yeah.
ways.
Well, there's a reason why people have said for years that they're wondering how long it's going to be before Apple just buys Nintendo. And yeah,
Yeah, but
honestly,
with
I
both
think that's
Nintendo and Apple, the games you bought 5 years ago don't work anymore.
5 years. Uh, good luck. Good luck making it 5 years.
Uh, Hoopy said, "Yeah, we have support for old devices without updates. It's called
Yeah.
Apple.com/store."
No. I
Well,
saw
that's,
that. I love that.
I mean, with up like the one exception I'll give Apple to them telling old devices to go die is I have my thank you for the thumbs up. I have my Power Mac G3 back there, and I did a fresh install of Mac OS X Tiger a couple months ago because I accidentally wiped the drive in that computer. Um, of course, with my own CDs that I downloaded from somewhere because Apple doesn't care. But once it was set up, I I opened software update and it downloaded the rest of the updates from Apple servers. So they're keeping software update alive for really old Mac versions, but like fresh installs is the part they don't seem to get. That's the part where you can just die,
Hmm.
which very weird. Whereas like Microsoft uh, also keeps its software update alive for a long time. Like I think the one for XP just shut down a couple of years ago. But of course, like you could. They didn't give you with free Windows XP either, but Microsoft's never officially done that with Windows. Um, yeah, so that's all I have. Do you want to talk about the Google
Yeah.
stuff?
So, I'm gonna venture to say that this is our main story. Not the last one, but certainly, I think the one that is getting the talk. Um, so companies doing bad things. That's our, I guess, sort of transitional theme there. Um, but
Is that not just every topic we do?
it really is, man. This is we do not talk about happy stuff. We mostly talk about, hey, company did bad thing or company released really neat thing that we want and probably
Right.
can't afford.
Right.
Um,
The things we want never happen. Like I don't we had like 30 episodes where we were like, someone please make a mirrorless camera that runs Android. Guess what? Never happened. They don't listen to us.
no,
They hate
it
innovation.
it has happened. One of them was a $6,000 camera with a fixed focal length fixed lens camera.
Yeah.
$6,000. I'm never gonna forgive them for that. Um, and there was another company that did it over in China. They kind of tried to sell the camera over here very minimally. Globally, not exclusively over here, but they tried selling globally, and kind of didn't really try that hard. And then Samsung tried doing it years and years ago, but their attempt was abysmal. So, yep, that's where that's at. Anyway, sorry that dredges up bad feelings. Um. So anyway, Google, we know, has basically been found guilty of uh the antitrust. It they're bad little boys and girls, and so a judge is determining what their punishments shall be. The DOJ is proposing that they sell off Chrome and unbundle Android. That's the basic like overview talking points. Um, and there's actually a few different recommendations. let's see. I think we might dig down a little bit more on these, but so the first thing, selling off Chrome. The idea being that Google, as an ad company and a search company, the fact they're also making the browser is giving them too much of an advantage, and basically giving them an insight into how users are browsing sites and using the internet that nobody else would be able to achieve. And they're right. I mean, nobody disputes that Chrome has been a massive advantage for Google. I think even Google admits this. So the idea here is they're pushing to force Google into selling off Chrome, which raises obviously a lot of questions, like who's going to buy Chrome? How much would they pay for it? What would they do with it or to it? Would this possibly spawn off or inspire other things to happen? And notably, Chrome, at least currently, and I assume through the sale or after the sale, would remain open source. Would Google possibly even keep building Chrome while someone else is just technically the owner and distributor of it? Not to say that the new owner wouldn't also be a developer on it, but could this kind of thing work? So Bloomberg originally reported this, and there was a specific thing or a quote by Bob Odell, he's of Technalysis Research. I think this just says so much in so few words. Quote, "It's not directly monetizable. It serves as a gateway to other things. It's not clear how you measure that from a pure revenue generating perspective." In other words, how much is it worth? Is it worth the estimates that Bloomberg gives are between 15 and 20 billion dollars, because there are 3 billion active monthly users. I get it, but also, how do you make money off of Chrome? Obviously, like they've built in things like trying to use the payment service, or use Chrome as a payment service, or trying to be kind of a man in the middle and stuff like that. They've tried doing a few other things with Chrome, like obviously collecting user data and things like that.
Yeah, and there's also an increasing amount of shopping features in Chrome, and I would imagine all of those are monetized or affiliate or whatever. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's the tough question. This is also the kind of the same thing as like it's sort of putting Chrome in the same space as like late stage tech startups, where it's like, okay, we have a ton of users, but we don't make money, and we don't know how to fix that. Like Chrome is Uber, right? If it gets split off immediately, it's like, how do we fix this?
Yeah,
we became critical infrastructure, and we don't know how to make money. So yeah, I don't know, because this is the thing that like every other web browser has struggled with to an extent, where Firefox doesn't really make money. They have some donations, they have some deals with advertisers, but they're sort of doing the same thing Google is doing, but on a smaller scale, because they own Pocket, and like Firefox has like Pocket integration, like stories from Pocket in it. And they also try to like white label, VPNs or whatever. But most of their money's coming from Google, which is the other, the fun thing in this antitrust lawsuit, where it's like, would they be legally allowed to keep doing that? And if not, like, does Mozilla just cease to exist? That's a fun thing to think about. And then everyone else is just like, Brave browser is sustained by the fact that it just has a lot of, sponsored integrations with other crypto companies, and they sort of exist to pump their own crypto token. So that's how they make money. Opera makes money by being evil. Uh, uh, it's mostly evil, and also like every imaginable brand integration you can think of. Like at some point, I got on Opera's like PR mailing list, which is a big mistake. They shouldn't have done that after I wrote about how awful they are, because now you're just giving me more ammunition. But they've emailed me like every time. They're like, the new Venom movie is coming out, and there's like a special Venom theme in the Opera GX browser. Don't you want to write about that? I'm like, absolutely not. I don't care. But it's like they're doing stuff like that all the time. You know,
So, for legal reasons, I'd also like to point out um, these are the comments and opinions of Corbin Davenport. We are
right?
not expressly saying Opera is evil, only that it feels like Opera is evil.
Allegedly,
No,
allegedly,
allegedly is not what we want to go with on this.
allegedly in Minecraft.
We're not accusing them of being evil. We're presupposing that they don't feel
They're
of the good.
they're displaying properties of being evil. Um,
Yes, they're
yeah,
symptomatic of an evil thing without
the
necessarily being evil. It could be a mistake.
yeah, and the other like kind of big independent ones are like Arc Browser, which I don't know what they're doing. I think they're just eating VC money. Because now they just announced recently that they're like kind of starting over, making a different web browser because Arc is too much of a learning curve for most people. Vivaldi seems to be doing okay. I don't know if they're profitable or not, but I know a lot of their money is coming from search engine deals, and they do some of the like sponsor placement stuff, and they have carved out a niche for themselves, making browsers for those really expensive EVs. Like their web browser for like Android Automotive and stuff is used by a couple different car makers, so that's where they're making money. But they're able to do that because they're not working on the core engine, and that is what Google has been doing. Google and Microsoft and a couple other companies. So yeah, that would be part of it. Is like whoever buys Chrome, are you buying the part that everyone's using and is the most monetizable, or are you buying the open source part that is a lot of expensive work in maintaining and upgrading and improving? Are you buying both of those things? Are you buying one and then the open source part gets spun off into like a foundation or something? I don't know. That's for courts to decide, and then for Google to relitigate in for years.
Well, and the really messy part is no matter what, you're buying the users. That's what this is really about. You're buying the users. And um look, we've seen this before. Not on this scale, but we've seen this before. A whenever another company buys any piece of software and gets the users with it, that becomes usually a problem. And we've seen it happen with small scale stuff like Android apps, and web services, websites, Twitter, um, where bad faith customers buy a thing and then try to either turn it into something it's not. Again, Twitter being a prime example of this, or I would even argue like, well, actually, a perfect example. Corbin will love this one. Link Bubble. Link Bubble was Chris Lacey's not patentable, but moderately, well, it wasn't even clever, but it was popular, and it was a browser that you could have on your phone that hid into a chat bubble. And it was a nice thing when it happened, And then the company that would ultimately become Brave bought it so that they could buy the users. They used the software for a while and kept jamming in more and more stuff for Brave, and then eventually launched the Brave browser separately and kept driving users over to that. Um, Ultimately, most of these companies are doing stuff in bad faith when they buy the software and the users with it. So, in this instance, I I can't help but think that's what's going to happen here. And look, whoever has enough money to buy Chrome, that's a short list. We're talking about half the price of Twitter, or well, Twitter when it was first sold. Um, Not half the price of Twitter today.
Yeah.
Half the price of Twitter today is like a worn down Buick, but
Yeah.
this is kind of a scary prospect that the most used web browser in the world could not necessarily overnight, but in a very short time become effectively malware. I mean, some people could already argue it is, but it actually could genuinely turn into malware overnight if a buyer with enough money comes along and decides to take it in bad faith. I don't think that's what's going to happen. If anything, I think what we're going to see is companies that want to do what Google did are going to be jumping on this if they can, which is basically Microsoft, Meta, maybe Oracle could try for this.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Imagine downloading Chrome and it's like Chrome powers 100 million devices.
Oh my god, wait. I just had the craziest idea and I love it. Imagine Apple buying it. The browser that spun off from WebKit becoming Apple's property again.
I mean,
They would never
already
want this, but
yeah.
it would be hilarious.
I mean, yeah, I'd say like I think in as realistic as you can get under capitalism, I think Google and Chrome have mostly been beneficial to users and to the web ecosystem, right? They made Chrome because they were a web company and they saw like, wow, every web browser sucks ass and this is hurting our business as a web app services company. So we need to make a web browser that lets us do what we want, and we're going to make all these cool APIs that a bunch of other websites can use. And like between that and building Android and making web apps like really important on Android, like they've done a pretty good job. Like I think they have generally done good things for the web ecosystem. Yeah, they have fucked up a couple times. But like I think this is probably as good as it gets in terms of like a good corporate synergy going on. Especially with Chrome. You know, they've been adding more crap to it the past couple years, but Chrome is still like mostly a good experience. Like in terms of UX, like it's far better than Edge or
it still feels
Brave
above
or
board.
yeah, like it's still fine. It's not malware. It's not like yeah, again, like the bar is in hell with Edge, but like it's so much better than Edge. Um Now it's like that's all good, but like yeah, like they probably it's that good because they're not trying to monetize it directly, as you said, right? It's just sort of the portal for all of Google's other stuff. And it's, you know, infrastructure that they need to build anyway for Android and all that fun stuff. So like it's good, but also if you zoom out, it's not good that the company dominating Web search is also the company dominating. Web advertising is also the same company dominating web browsers. Like you can't. That's not good. That's not like you know, it's great that Chrome isn't garbage, but like that is also an issue that needs to be fixed. And I do think whoever Chrome goes to, like 90% odds Chrome gets noticeably worse.
Hmm.
Like it's gonna get real bad. It's probably gonna be great ammunition for like libertarian people to be like, wow, the government ruined Google Chrome by making it sell to fucking, you know, Boeing or, you know, whoever buys it.
Let
Um,
let's one remember that true libertarians, that kind of libertarian, is mostly non-existent now. Um, uh, though I agree with the basic argument that would kind of turn into. Um, I will throw in, weirdly, I do think there's one exception, and I hate saying this. Boy, do I hate saying this, but I think if Meta bought it, they would actually be the one company that comes to mind that would be like, you know what? No, we're actually going to let Chrome just be Chrome. We want the data now. Like we're going to scrape as much as Google ever did, and maybe more. And we're gonna keep trying to do all the same stuff Google was doing, but I bet they would keep it above board, kind of the same way that they did with React, kind of the same way that they've done with open source. Look, I hate the company, and they are pretty freaking evil in almost every way. But man, when it comes to open source software, the few projects that they do that are legit, damn it, Meta actually is kind of above board. And
I
Hoopy is,
yeah, I mean
yeah,
this yeah.
with Hoopy's with me on this.
I think this does depend on like what happens to the open source part, but I do think the actual like finished web browser Chrome would turn into something. I don't think it would be as bad as Edge, but it'd be very close. Like if you look at like what the Facebook and Instagram apps have become, like it would be kind of that same thing. Like your tabs will never be in the right order ever again. It's gonna constantly mix up your tabs. Um, and Hoopy said, I also see no route where Google sells Chrome and their very next action isn't to fork Chrome, so Android and Chrome can still have a browser. Yeah, like that's the thing is like, what if you like what happens to the open source part and would they still contribute to that or would they fork it? You know, like they did with the engine, right? Chrome used to be WebKit, and they used to contribute to WebKit, and then at some point they were like, well, we want to make a bunch of architectural changes now, but Apple isn't really going for that, so we just need to fork it now. So yeah, that a lot of different routes this could go. Um, it's also possible, like the only alternative I see where Chrome is, yeah, like yeah, Chrome has two options. It can either be bought by a company that uses it to sell other things, like what Microsoft does with Edge and what Google does to an extent with Chrome already, or I don't think this would ever happen, but it could also go off to a different company and Chrome becomes the product that is sold. Like it becomes a subscription, or like there's a Chrome Plus you can buy, and that's what they try to do. I don't think that'll happen. I think it'll just be data mining for Oracle or someone else. But
Yeah, the
that's a
data
fun
mining is way
other
more
option.
valuable than trying to sell a browser, because
Yeah,
all that's going to happen, the moment that they put a price tag on it, everyone will just bum rush Firefox. That's it. Everyone will go straight to Firefox or maybe one of the other Chrome spin-offs, and yeah, and we'll just see a few years of very, very stagnant existence for browsers before somebody
yeah,
else spins up something based on Firefox, gets enough developers together, probably from a few different companies, and that becomes the new thing.
yeah.
So
That is my hopeful version to come out of whatever happens in the next couple of years is that someone will start making a web browser that doesn't uh, treat its users like garbage, and it'll probably be paid. And that's what I'm hoping to use. That's where I'm going to ride out the apocalypse in. Like maybe it's Vivaldi. I don't know. That's kind of where they're going. Is they're building something for pro users. So like I could see them doing that. Maybe Mozilla. I don't know. Mozilla's in a weird place because they're also like they kind of have to be open source because it's how like being bundled with every Linux distro works. Um, so I don't know necessarily what they would do there. Um, Hoopy said, I could also see a Chromium Foundation type thing established where Google is nominally still in control, but a bunch of friendly companies can go, no, we totally have a say. Yeah, that's what I said like a couple of months ago here, I think. That's my most popular game theory is there's like a foundation set up to run Chromium, and then just everyone like builds their thing based on that, and gives money and developers to it, like how Linux works.
Yeah, that would be the most positive outcome.
Yeah. And that's also moving it to a thing where like Google is like still in control, but it kind of doesn't look that way, is also what they did to AMP. Like AMP is a foundation that is independent. But the difference there is that Google was the only one who ever wanted AMP, so it makes sense that no one wants it. But a lot of people want Chrome. So,
yeah. So, Hoopy, I'm gonna come back to what you said with that in that last bit in just a second. But the one quasi catch is Google still needs, like, they need to have the Chrome Foundation exist for Chromium and pretty much the whole open source project and a lot of that stuff. But if they want to keep harvesting data, which is absolutely what they're going for, that part probably can't really exist under the Chrome Foundation, I believe. Maybe there is a sneaky way to do that, but I'm not sure. So one way or another, Google can still drive the development of Chrome, and they probably will, even if they sell it. But I think the access to the data and the users, that's the part Google isn't going to want to give up. And I don't know that they can necessarily do that while putting it under a quote unquote Chrome Foundation. But I don't know, maybe. As a side note, yes, what JetBrains did with Kotlin, the reason, you're absolutely right. It is to it's to relax the fears and theories that JetBrains would do with Kotlin, what everyone knows Oracle would do with Java if they had actually created Java, and what they did do with Java even though they didn't create Java. Yeah, nobody wants a evil company to have the ownership rights on a language, and everyone's pretty paranoid about that. That being said, it was very literally just a straight copy of what Microsoft did with C# a decade earlier. And it's debatable how and when that happened, because Microsoft actually did this with C# like 3 separate times. They moved more and more C# into basically a multi-company foundation that lots of people could technically have a stake in, even though Microsoft very clearly still owns and controls C# in every conceivable way. But they do allow people to technically have a voice and a board and other stakeholders. But yeah, that's what JetBrains did. They looked at what Microsoft did and said, and basically copy paste, and that's good. It's a good thing. I'm just saying it wasn't a particularly first time strategy. And yeah, you say JetBrains is still making the decisions with Google just dropping in to go, hey, this would be cool for Android. I would argue at this stage, because if you've listened to the Android developers backstage podcast, yes, that is ADB podcast. You have very likely heard lots of the guests come on and talk about Kotlin development. At this point, it's a lot of Googlers who are outright straight up their daily job is working on Kotlin development, like building Kotlin itself. So I think at this stage, JetBrains might claim, and rightfully so, I'm sure they do claim that they are making a lot of decisions, but I think it would be disingenuous to suggest that Google is not like at least a 50% stakeholder in all of those decisions now. Frankly, I have a feeling Google is probably the overwhelming decision maker, and JetBrains has some other things that they're like, yeah, no, we do care that this makes it in. And I'm sure that two of them agree most of the time anyway, so it's likely a non-issue.
Yeah, and Austin brought up DOJ needs to go after Google ads in their data collection, not necessarily Chrome or Android. Yeah, that's the other thing is like Congress could just like pass data privacy laws and then companies just stop making the money they would have made with our current very lax data protection, and then the market just corrects itself. But we can't do that either. So yeah, good times.
Yeah. So I feel like I also want to bring up kind of the maybe unintended side effects of the quote unquote sell off Chrome thing. What happens to Chrome OS? What happens to as previously mentioned, Chrome for Android? What happens to a lot of the other obviously like Node? Node would probably be okay, at least in the short term. How things go in the long term is less clear. But there are a lot of things that are based on Chrome's technologies that if those end up, or if Google ends up selling it off, they've got a lot less interest remaining to keep developing and building on things that others are using. And it's very possible that those suddenly become dead ends. And Chrome OS in particular. I mean, this is not something that Google's really sharing and making super available in its raw form. I mean, technically, yes, it is open source, but it's also kind of not. Or at least important chunks of Chrome OS are not. And this
also Chrome OS being the platform used by a lot of public education.
Yeah.
So government has a vested interest there too.
Yeah. And
whoever not just government, like every educational institution.
Well, also extent. a lot of businesses, they use Chrome OS as just, a dumb terminal, basically, kind of the cheap front end to their web services for employees. So, yeah, whoever buys Chrome, would Google keep doing Chrome OS if they don't own Chrome anymore? I mean, they could. There's probably no reason they can't, but that also, there become conflicting interests with whoever buys it may want to take things in a direction that doesn't really work with Chrome OS, at which point Google is presumably not going to be allowed to do certain things, possibly, because the DOJ obviously, if they're ordering Google to sell off Chrome, does that mean Google or would that prevent Google from just starting up a new project and saying, no, it's totally not Chrome, we swear. By the way, we're totally forking Chrome and we're building our own stuff with it. Like, it feels like this starts getting into some murky territory, and I don't think the DOJ is looking at this stuff, but it's the lawyers will get really, really deeply involved in it, which probably my hunch, and this is just total wild spitballing. There's no analysis going into this, but I kind of have a feeling that Google looks at this and says, if we have to sell off Chrome OS is dead. Not literally, but Chrome OS goes away. And in its place, in a few years, will be Android. Or, I suppose, maybe Fuchsia or something. But there is a very realistic possibility that if this actually goes through, by the way, quick, massive disclaimer, Google's obviously going to appeal this ruling no matter what. This is going to be in court for another 5 years. But whatever happens, I think we can safely assert, if Google ultimately is forced to sell off Chrome OS goes with it. Or it not goes with it in the sale, but Chrome OS dies as a result.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what happens to Chrome OS with a Google sell-off, because the weird thing is, like, it doesn't really need to be Chrome. Like, there's already, like, I saw, I think Michelle Rahman wrote this about Chromebooks supposedly maybe switching to just Android as a base, and then there's like a different UI on top. Like, as long as they have Android, like, they could do that. It wouldn't really be that different. And then they just put like a different, they put the new Google browser on top or whatever, and fundamentally nothing has changed. So I don't know. But I wish Chrome OS would die because it sucks.
So Hoopy at basically saying that, yeah. I am half in agreement, except I think the current state of Chrome OS is they are developing on it, obviously. They are building things, they are adding to it, but I feel like this is sort of like the maintenance mode that has run amok. They're obviously still working on it, but I think they don't want to be. And they have too many users to kill it. They have too many contracts to abandon it. So, yeah, I feel like this is a victim of your own success sort of situation where Google would love to get rid of it, but can't. So, hey, the selling Chrome in theory could be a minor blessing in that sense, but I doubt it would make that big of a difference. I think they would love to get rid of Chrome OS, just don't have a good way. They don't have a good path to doing that, short of the very, very painful long road of kind of converting it into Android piece by piece.
Yeah, and Hoopy said they think it's more that they just don't know what to do with it than necessarily getting rid of it. Chrome OS is weird because I had a Chromebook very early on, and back when it was literally just like, it wasn't as early as when it was just like a full screen Chrome window, but it was like a couple years after that where it was still only web apps and you could like hack Linux onto it. And I liked it for that at the time, where it was sort of just like a terminal. And that was back in the day where, like, if something broke, I can just wipe the computer and it doesn't matter at all. Mm-hmm. Like, there's nothing stored in here, it doesn't matter. And there was issues with that, like it had no apps. And then Google's solution for that was Android apps. And then they slowly started turning more of Chrome OS into Android, which made it a worse user experience. and they've sort of gone back and forth on that, but there's still like a lot of Android in Chrome now, Chrome OS, and they also built like an entire different VM system to get Linux apps on it, which is still not a good experience. So yeah, they don't there's not really a cohesive vision there, because now it's sort of just it's like different windows. It's not really better than it in any metric, except like it might stay okay for longer because Windows apps can more easily mess up your computer and make it slower for reasons you don't understand. I think we said the Linux app experience is better than I expected it could be. Yeah, like it's very impressive for what it is. It's just kind of weird, and because they were also doing that thing. They remember when they were trying to build like get a sort of official Steam container, and that was going to be their Linux push, and they were going to make a bunch of Chromebooks with dedicated GPUs, and then just none of those Chromebooks ever came out, but they made like gaming Chromebooks for for cloud gaming. That was weird. That was a weird thing that they did.
Yes, it was. And I'm gonna also argue, it took a long time. It took a really long time, because just consider how many years there were things like you could not get audio out of a Linux app. There was a long time where performance was awful because everything was being, if I remember, every frame had to be rendered twice or something in order to get it to work. There was some weird stuff that they were doing with graphics, or with the GPU interactions back then. And man, Linux was a mess for a good long time. So, you know, yay, they got there, but it was a rough trip. I say as a person who's never used it, but it was a really rough trip. So
it's definitely in the same category for me as like wine on Linux, where I'm like, this is an incredibly impressive piece of engineering, and also it doesn't work for what I want.
Yeah.
Like this is very cool. I can appreciate the effort. It works for some stuff, doesn't work for other things.
It's what is that backhanded compliment everyone in the South loves? He means well.
Yeah.
Yeah, your
Also,
expression says I got it right.
Bless your heart.
Yeah, oh yeah, or bless your heart. Yeah. Yeah, this look, they've done good. Well, congratulations. Yeah. Also, this sucks. No one should use it. Which is
I still have
fair, but
yeah, I still have the in my Nexus Tools installer, my ADB installer for Linux and Windows and Mac. I still have the Chrome OS detection in there when you're running it in the Linux container on Chrome OS to let you know that USB doesn't work. And you just can't do that. It's not allowed.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, and Austin said like there's not really a advantage to Chromebooks with the current market, and yeah, that's like kind of what I was saying earlier. Like its advantages kind of dissipated a while ago. Now it's just like the computer you get if you just want something that works and is cheap and okay, and probably won't break if you install something wrong. But maybe it will because it has Android apps, and sometimes Android apps do wonky things.
Yeah. And sort of speaking of that, one of the other things that the DOJ is pushing for is to force Google to, quote, separate Android from search and Google Play, but without forcing Google to sell Android entirely. Which, this is another one of those where I'm trying to picture what this looks like. And I'm sure the DOJ probably has something that resembles a more coherent explanation of this. Or maybe they don't, because honestly, I think the DOJ they don't know enough about the technology to make this sort of statement. But it feels like they're just trying to blindly say, here's the stuff where you make money, and we know Android helps you make money in those things. Stop doing that. How? Like, what does that mean? I genuinely cannot picture what kind of what kind of thing that looks like once they try to implement it. I suppose an argument could be made for stop taking user data, like stop doing telemetry and analytics on Android usage, and obviously, you know, all the like exclusivity contracts and things like that. Stop those things. I think those are the givens, and I have a feeling Google's going to probably compromise on that stuff, because it's a losing fight, and the EU wants them to stop doing that too. And the EU is much more likely to get its way than the DOJ is. But I don't know that I don't know how these recommendations make sense. And if I'm being brutally honest, I kind of feel like the DOJ looks worse making a request like this that has so little clarity on what they're asking for. And to be fair, these are all still technically these are ideas and rumors about something the DOJ is going to ask for, rather than things it has officially asked for. This is basically an early report as opposed to the official, like, what the DOJ is literally saying. I don't know when that will come out, but let's be honest, these reports have been pretty dead on. The DOJ isn't exactly hiding its intentions, so I don't think there's going to be much more said than this.
Austin said, I wish the DOJ would focus on consumer protection because Congress isn't. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what else they can do is I guess my issue. Like, their job is sort of the corporate side, and also now that we ditched the Chevron defense, maybe they can't do this at all, and we'll just find out in 8 months, you know. So we're having a fun time. I wish Congress could do literally anything except give money to Israel. They can do that.
Oh, come on. They can also give them plenty of weapons.
Mm-hmm.
So the final...
speaking of weapons.
Okay, but before we transition out, I'm going to mention this because the DOJ does say that they want to it's kind of a, I'm calling this a two-parter. One, they want to make it so advertisers have more control over where their ads appear, and they want more access to data, which the DOJ seems to be pushing for. I don't think that's necessarily a good thing, because that feels like a thing where other companies could give them that, and if they want that, they can go to other companies. That feels like a competitive, like a element of competition. Google promises to show your ads in better places, but at the cost of you're not going to get as much data out of it. Or you can go to someone else who will give you more data, but they might not be as good at placing that. That feels like a competitive element, not something that the DOJ should be ordering. That being said, here's where I'm kind of arguing this is a consumer friendly, one of the few consumer friendly things, but the DOJ also wants to force Google to give more control over, or they want websites to have more control over how their data is being used by, like, AI products. That, I know it doesn't sound like a consumer protection, but when you consider most websites are really just rehashing what users have posted in some way, shape, or form, yeah, that is consumer protection. It's not the thing you're asking for, Austin, and I agree with you. But this is a consumer protection element, um, because if websites can have some control over this, that's a good thing. And I will throw in the bonus argument. I think if the DOJ forces Google into doing this, it is a hop, skip, and a jump away from turning that into regulation that everyone that everybody will have to follow. And that I'm here for that. I hope. I hope that part happens, because that's the thing that needs to happen. Websites need to be able to control the data that they publish, and in the sense that AI should absolutely not be able to just scrape it and run.
Yep. So speaking of scraping, the first developer preview of Android 16 is out.
It's scraped
Whoa.
by just before the end of the year.
It's scraped by. It's much earlier. We usually get these in like January or February, I think.
Yeah.
So there's not really anything in this. This is how all the Android updates for the past like couple years have worked. There's like little hints of stuff in the developer previews that people dig up. And then in the beta is usually when we get the minimal amount of like visible changes. And then a couple more betas, and then we get the final release. So there's not really anything in this yet. They talk about an updated photo picker and some more APIs for health records, and also the latest version of the Privacy Sandbox, everyone's favorite API, which is the thing that they paused working on in Chrome because the UK got mad at them because I forget what the issue was, but like I think it was like advertisers like they built it so advertisers could have more data, but it wouldn't be connected like coming from Google, but it's still not enough for them. So no one's happy with this, which maybe that's another thing the DOJ is looking at is how Google has kind of messed this up too. But anyway, kind of the more interesting, really the only interesting thing here is they mentioned in this blog post that they're targeting late Q1 of 2025 for the platform stability milestone, which is the update like a couple betas in when they're like, we're done now. We're done. We're just going to do bug fixing from now until the update is out. And usually that's like in the middle of the year. That's in like July or June.
It usually lands right around IO. Either, if I'm trying to remember, I think there's been once or twice where it came after IO. Well, in recent history, they were moving for platform stability earlier and earlier in the year for quite a while anyway. Like if you go back to when they were first doing the betas, then platform stability was a thing that they weren't hitting until after IO typically, or I think it wasn't happening till after IO. And then progressively they've kind of moved it up, so you almost always get platform stable right around the same time as IO. That way they can do sessions oriented towards that.
Yeah.
And that makes sense.
Yeah, they can get dev started earlier. It gives like OEMs the green light to be like, yeah, you can start porting your skins over now. We're not really gonna mess with too much after this. Now, importantly, this does say we're expecting to reach platform stability in March 2025, and from that point, you'll have several months before the official release to do your testing. So, Android 16 will come out several months after March 2025 if this timeline holds. So even though we're getting preview builds earlier, the actual Android release still might be like July, August, somewhere around there, like it has been. So maybe nothing there changes. We'll see.
So I could see a version of this where maybe this leads to releasing the Pixels earlier in the year too. Not that the two need to happen side by side. There's honestly no reason anymore for them to do side by side release of the new Android version and the new Pixel version. And objectively speaking, they haven't really released them side by side in a few years anyway. The new Android versions typically are about a month ahead of the Pixel releases, so this could just be sort of setting up for a little bit earlier in the year for both. Probably with an even wider gap, or maybe not. Who knows? It's I don't know. I don't think that this really affects all that much. The one, I guess, notable point is they also previously said that they were going to start doing, or implied that they were going to start doing 2 major releases in a year. But right now, we don't have anything that actually shows that that's going to be a thing, so much as it kind of looks like they're just maybe doing a .1 release that they're calling Android 16. We'll see if this is a one-time thing, because there were specific reasons why they wanted to get 16 out early, and maybe next year they won't do this. So maybe it's going to be 2 versions in 1 year, one time, and then there will be no pattern.
Yeah, well, they are laying the groundwork for that in this, because the blog post mentions how developers can check for the major or minor SDK release.
Mm-hmm.
So they're laying some groundwork there, but yeah, it might be like Austin said, like it might be a 0.1, because Google has done that where they'll do a point update for Android, but it's still like a new SDK version. Like I think
it has to be
7. Yeah, I think like pretty much all of them were that, except maybe some of the like Kit Kat and Jelly Beans. Maybe one of those wasn't a new SDK. A few of them were.
No, there was one instance where it was not a new SDK, but it was an entirely a bug fix release. And if I remember, it was because of a critical error in one of the APIs that it just misbehaved. So they did a release without adding or changing any APIs, just an implementation detail. But yeah, it typically, if you make any change at all, you need a new SDK for it. So here we go. And they don't necessarily not an argument, but a point I made with you and a couple of other people in a conversation is there's a separation between API version, SDK version, Android version. They mostly go together, as in like when one goes up, the others typically go up. But there is a distinction where you could have, in theory, you could have like 3 different versions of Android 16 all called 16, yet a different API version in all of them, because something changes in the API. And then you can have, obviously, like SDKs can have dozens of releases for each API version. So SDK version doesn't actually mean anything other than just it's a softer version. But yeah, the API version is what's actually important in most cases, and I don't think we're going to see a whole lot of changes here. Just relatively minor updates. And that's kind of what Android has been for a while now anyway. Each new version of Android is relatively small when you start looking at how much they've added or changed. that's the side effect of a relatively mature OS. It doesn't need to go through massive changes every release anymore. But Austin says he thinks there's also supposed to be an API update at the end of this year. And yeah, that's basically what Google previously said. There should be another API update. But again, we don't know if that's a pattern or if that's just a one-off. And I still have a theory that I think what they're kind of doing this for is to start building AI stuff into the OS. Honestly, I thought that was what this version was going to be. It doesn't appear to be that, based on them saying that it's the photo picker and health records. But I don't know. Maybe they're adding the APIs privately so that they can start working on them, and they're not actually going to add it to the SDK until, however far down the line. But it will technically still be supported in 16 once they decide to roll that stuff out. That's my theory. We'll see.
Yeah, and they're starting to do that with Chrome as well. They are starting to test the APIs that let websites use like the built-in Gemini Nano model directly. Although I think only on desktop for now. I don't know if Chrome for Android can download Gemini, or if it's hooked up to use whatever one Google downloaded. But, yeah. Well, Android 16, it's coming.
That it is. So, speaking of things you can download through the internet, most random transition I think I've done in a while. Corbin has a new thing for doing things through the internet.
Yes, this is a quick Corbin review. Is I bought a new router because I had Eero 6 and Eero 6 Pro mesh systems that I reviewed at Android Police. That's how long ago that was. But the Pros died at some point or started misbehaving in a way I couldn't really figure out, so I switched. I was using the Pros, then I went back to the normal system, and that's what I've been using for a while. But the normal Eero 6, it wasn't really maxing out my internet connection. I think it could do up to up to 900 something megabits per second full network capacity. And I only had one Ethernet port. So my little cabinet of networking stuff over there, I had to have a switch, and everything wired was running through the switch. And there's a bunch of other things I don't really like about Eero. I don't like that it doesn't have a desktop site at all, or like a web client. Like if I want to know the IP address of something on my network, I have to go grab my phone. There's a bunch of other stuff that Eero doesn't support. Like you can't use an access point as just an access point. It has to be a mesh node. They want to sell you subscriptions, all that fun stuff. So I wanted a new router, and I didn't want another Eero for all those reasons, because the new Eeros are the same. They're just faster. I don't want TP-Link, because that one time I reviewed a TP-Link router, the company really sketched me out. So I'm not buying networking equipment from them. I still have some Casa smart plugs, but that's probably fine. All my internet traffic is not going through them. So I went with Asus, and I got the Asus RT BE92U. Good name. But it is one of their newer routers.
Networking products always have the worst naming conventions.
Yeah. But yeah, this has only been on Amazon for 38 days. This is pretty new. Because I was looking at a different Wi-Fi 7 router that was $500, and I didn't really want to buy that. But this is almost as good, and it's $300. So I was like, okay. And it's actually, I think it was $280 when I got it. They raised the price. Yeah, so it is Wi-Fi 7. The fun part is that I have one Wi-Fi 7 thing, which is I have it right here. It's my review unit of a Snapdragon Elite laptop. So this says Wi-Fi 7. I don't own anything else with Wi-Fi 7, and I have one Wi-Fi 6E device, and that is my gaming PC because I got a new wireless card for it a while ago. Everything else in my home is 6 or lower. So I'm not really taking advantage of it right now, but I'm just going to plan on keeping this for a very long time, and I'll eventually accumulate more Wi-Fi 7 devices. And yeah, it's pretty nice so far. I got it set up yesterday. The setup was a little bit confusing, but once it got going, it does have a desktop web panel with all the settings, so I can actually view and change settings from my computer. It's incredible. The web panel looks straight out of 2010. It's perfect. The mobile app, actually I'll open it. The mobile app also is straight out of 2010. Like it looks like something that is on an HTC phone. Yeah, so there it is. It's got like a weird like gamer thing. Oh wait. Do that. Okay. Yeah, it's got like cool like gamer things. There is a theme picker and there is an option for like just a normal like modern UI, but I'm keeping this because it's pretty like even when I hit if I can do it while looking, if I hit like this mesh button, whoa, there's an animation to show my mesh nodes.
So cool.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. But yeah, it's working pretty good so far. I did speed tests before and after on like my phone and my my Mac Mini at my desk. And right now the actual Wi-Fi performance got a little bit better because like the antennas are bigger. But like, you know, the Eero is already Wi-Fi 6 and most of my stuff is 6 or worse, so there isn't like a generational improvement. I don't have anything using like that whole 6 gigahertz band right now is on, but I'm not using it at all. Hoopy said, how does this have 4G and 5G? It doesn't. What it does have is a USB port. And if you plug in a hotspot or like one of those USB modems or your phone and you flip on USB tethering, it will use that connection.
Okay, that's actually cool.
Yeah, it's pretty. I did like briefly try it. I plugged in my phone and it switched to, I don't know how this works, but it switched automatically to USB tethering. And it did show as a,
because Google added that as a OS feature years ago. I'm imagining that's probably they probably have a protocol built in, and maybe it's something that they have to do with each OEM. But I imagine that's just something that they probably worked out, and
some USB protocol somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I did try that. I plugged in my phone and it did register on the panel as like a backup network source. So how it works is I don't think I can like force it without like disconnecting my modem, but how it's supposed to work is when the modem drops out, it will switch to that. So that's kind of neat. But yeah, it's Wi-Fi 7. It's got that. It has a 10 gig port. And then what is it? 4 2.5 gig ports. So that's a lot of.
Same thing.
No, because then I have to walk all the way over there. I don't want to do
that. Yes, that's the problem.
Also, again, as long as I live here, I get almost no cell signal in this apartment. The wall, I don't know what the walls are made of, but they block almost all cell signal. So
adamantium walls.
Yeah.
You need that when you live in a hurricane zone.
Yeah. So so it's got like a lot of bandwidth in it. Again, I don't this is the other thing is I don't have anything that has 2.5 gig or 10 gig ports, so I can't really test those. I have a couple USB adapters that are 1 gig. I'm sure I could get like I'm sure I could plug in like my MacBook or something with like Thunderbolt or USB 4 adapter to max out that speed, but I don't need that right now. My NAS is 1 gig. But like I know there's that option to like use both of the Ethernet ports on the NAS and like bridge them for more bandwidth, but like I don't really need to do that. So
Okay, so a couple of quick fill-in points. Number one, the feature that you just described, which I am suddenly drawing a it's link aggregation. If you're ever curious about this, it's called link aggregation, and what it does is it allows you to run two simultaneous data streams from a NAS over a over like a network device that supports this. The catch is if you're moving a single large file, it will only move at the speed of one of those ports. It will not move at the speed of the two combined. So it, if you aggregate two 1 gigabit ports, you're gonna still move at 1 gigabit, not 2. However, this allows you to have, let's say, two computers move, like, both pulling the same file at full speed, at that full 1 gigabit for each of those two computers at the same time without having to split that data. So, it's useful. It serves a purpose. Yeah. It's just not necessarily the thing a lot of people want it to be.
Yeah, it's not impacting me where I am the only one using the NAS, and also all my files are on spinning hard disks. Yeah. That would be the speed bottleneck, not the network. So
also, you need to have networking equipment that supports this, specifically whatever you're connecting the NAS to, whatever router. The router or switch or whatever has to support this feature, and
not Eero.
Eero does not. I can tell you with confidence, TP-Link's, at least their mesh stuff, the Deco line, does not support it. I don't know about their other routers. I'm going to be finding that out because I have a couple to review. But yeah, so there's that. Jumping very slightly earlier into your comments, you also mentioned network adapters. I happen to have and very occasionally use this one. It's just a Ugreen adapter, 2.5 gigabit. It works fine. It does the job. Mm-hmm. There are 10 gigabit adapter. Well, there are 5 and 10 gigabit adapters out there also. Let me start by saying, I think this one from Ugreen, I don't remember what I bought it for, but I want to say it was like 20 bucks, something like that. It's, a couple bucks more than what you'd buy a 1 gigabit adapter for. If you want to get a 5 gigabit adapter, I think your price jumps to somewhere around like 80 bucks. You want to get a 10 gigabit adapter? I'm not kidding. Expect to pay... the lowest I've seen is 150. And that's from a really dubious company. The average, $240 for a USB adapter. They can kiss every square inch of my naughty bits. I'm just saying.
There's definitely like the Thunderbolt effect of like the people who need this there's like 7 of them, so we're gonna make them pay at the nose.
Yeah. Well, what's really painful about this to me is a Mac Mini comes with a 10 gigabit port. Mac Minis just have it. Meanwhile, if you get a MacBook Pro or any MacBook, you've got Thunderbolt ports that can move over 10 gigabit per second in data, but oh man, you cannot hook it to a network and get anywhere near that speed without spending outrageously high prices, which has led me to having other complaints, but those can be for another time. But yeah.
Yeah.
And pretty much every laptop out there just doesn't have Ethernet ports anyway, so you won't find 10 gigabit ports in most laptops. And most desktops actually don't ship with 10 gigabit adapters in them. Some do. Like I mentioned, the Mac Mini, obviously, an iMac has one, or I think pretty sure it did. And you can actually get, and this drives me a little crazy, you can get 10 gigabit like internal adapters. I think you can get those for like, I want to say like $50. Mm-hmm. I looked at the price not long ago. It's not cheap, but it's reasonable. And plus, by the way, bonus points, 10 gigabit adapters, the ones that work over Thunderbolt, they also notoriously have overheating problems. So that not only are you going to spend $250 for one, you're also probably going to see it burn out in 3 months. So
I just looked up. OWC has a Thunderbolt 3 10 gig adapter, and it is $200, and it is in like a Raspberry Pi sized case with vent holes. Yeah. Oh dear. So yeah, so those are ports I'm not going to use to their full potential probably ever. We'll see. I do have like an increasing number of things that are wired, but I have next to the router I have my NAS, which is one gig, and I'm not maxing that out, and my SmartThings hub, which is nothing. And then that runs to a switch in my TV cabinet back there that is hooked up to mostly my Xbox, which is also not going to max out the 10 gig, but having it wired helps. So actually, that's the thing I should try soon is local Xbox streaming again. Maybe that's slightly better now. Yeah, so it's got all that bandwidth I'm not going to use. It has Wi-Fi 7, which I'm not really using right now. It did when I was setting it up. I will say, like, just in terms of network performance, I'm forced by my lease to pay for 1 gigabit Spectrum cable internet. I can't go lower than that. I can't go higher than that. That's just what it is. So I've had that internet for a while, and it's been hooked up to my Eero, and the fastest I've ever been able to get on the Eero, like on the speed test on the Eero itself, is like 920 down. Like there's like actual limit. Like if you go to Amazon, I don't know like how, like what the exact technology is, but like that's where the Eero 6 base maxes out. The Pro can go higher. So with this router that goes much higher than that, I get the benefit of Spectrum. Thank you, Mac. I get the benefit of Spectrum over provisioning me. So I went from about 920 megabit max to, I think a speed test I did was like 1,150 megabits per second. So now I'm getting slightly above what I pay for. So that's good, I guess. General Wi-Fi performance seems about the same. This isn't like the most challenging Wi-Fi environment. It's really just annoying because I have like 20 networks around me saturating the 2.4 gig bands. So
yeah, but I mean, if 2.4 obviously is old and has a lot of stuff saturating it anyway. 5 gigahertz, almost everything can connect to, and that's there. This is also going to support 6 gigahertz, and anything that supports Wi-Fi 6E works on 6 gigahertz. So 6E, it's certainly not in everything, but a fair number of the things you have probably do get that. Fair number.
I don't think I have any. I have one 6E device, and it's my gaming PC. My Mac Mini is 6, MacBook Air is 6, iPhone is 6.
Yeah, that's right. You did.
Everything else I have is older. Yeah. I don't get the Wi-Fi 6E, and I don't get the AI. Apple hates me and my guts. So yeah, I don't know. At some point, maybe I'll get like a 6E adapter and see how that works, or maybe
Oh,
I'll
don't.
whatever
You'll
upgrade.
replace your hardware faster than
Yeah,
it's
this
ever
like
worth getting an adapter.
maybe there'll be something where that's useful, but yeah. So general Wi-Fi performance is a little bit better, but it's not like crazy. Like that makes sense because again, I can't really take full advantage of this right now. Um, I will say I like all having all the settings again. That's nice. This router is like it's not trying to upsell me on a subscription. Like the network backup thing is in Eero as well. Like the newer Eeros have that, but it's only unlocked when you have the Eero subscription. And it's the same thing with like per device network activity. The UI for that on this is really bad, but it does exist and I don't have to pay more for it. So that's nice. So
Yeah. So speak really quick. I know that this is your topic, but the TP link that I just reviewed, I think that review may have gone live on the webs on AP. I'm not quite sure, but yeah. Oh man, I saw the subscription stuff in there and just immediately it was like that pucker up moment. Uh, it was not good,
yeah,
and
yeah,
I
I can understand the subscriptions a little bit for the stuff that is actually a server somewhere running. Like if they want to bundle in like ad blocking DNS or whatever, like sure, I guess you can do that. That's fine. But like when it's like with the Eero where it's locking device activity graphs, which is a thing that only happens on the device. There's no other like external processing going on there. That's a little silly to me.
hmm yeah, I'm
Um,
really not happy about the idea of and TP Link subscriptions are, as far as I can tell, entirely for stuff happening on the device. There's no reason those are subscriptions. It's mostly just pay to unlock a thing that it's already doing. And I have a
yeah,
funny feeling that it's probably also sending that data back somewhere for use. But yeah, I
yeah,
don't love that. Um and there were other things that I also wasn't too happy about with the TP Link, particularly the fact that there is, while there is technically a desktop dashboard or a web dashboard, you literally can change almost nothing. You can use it if you need to do like a firmware update. You can use it for a couple of other like very minor changes, but you cannot do things like assigning IPs. You can't kick anything off the network. You can't change any passwords. You effectively can't make changes, at least none that matter. So yeah, TP links, and this is again for their mesh product. Mesh products typically are treated differently than what I would call real Wi-Fi routers.
yeah,
This is honestly what you got is a real Wi-Fi router, and most of the mesh stuff, it's almost more like a point and shoot camera as compared to like a real DSLR or
yeah,
real
yeah,
mirrorless.
and yeah, like it's back to the discussion earlier. It's like Chromebooks, where it's like, all right, you get it, and you turn it on there, it's done. Like what you get there is the maximum of what you can do there.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, but yeah, so this was pretty good so far. It has a bunch of stuff that I'm not going to use. It's still kind of cool. Like it can do, like I can use that USB port for like a hard drive and plug it in, and now it's a NAS. That's kind of cool. I don't need that obviously now, but it's cool that it's there. It can route all of my internet through a VPN if I wanted to do that, and also I believe it can run a VPN that I can access from outside my home if I want to use my home's internet. So like, if I remember doing this a long time ago, not with a router at my home, but a VPN server I was running on a VPS. where like if I wanted to stream like Netflix or something on a network that blocked it, I would use that because the server that only I use is not going to be auto detected by Netflix as a VPN.
Yeah.
So, like something like that would be cool for this. A bunch of other stuff. One thing that is cool about Asus's ecosystem that I like is they have a bunch of uh, mesh nodes and mesh routers, and then normal routers that all support their AI mesh functionality. So you can take
I was
like
wondering
a
about that.
bunch. Yeah, like you can like I could buy an identical one of this router and set it up as a mesh node. And then like it would use like that tri-band backhaul for like really good speeds. I would get, again, all those ports I could use for whatever I wanted to hook up there. I'm pretty sure I could like turn off the Wi-Fi and just use it as a really, really expensive access point, which is something I wanted to do with Eero, but I couldn't. But like, yeah, you can get like any ace, like I could get like a cheapo Wi-Fi 6 one if I just wanted an AP somewhere and make that a mesh node. Um, Eero does kind of the same thing. You can get like just any Eero and add it to your Eero network, but this is a little bit more useful because uh it has more of the router features, and like you can even do stuff like have um Wi-Fi networks that are only on certain nodes. So, maybe you just needed a like if you set up like what I had to do, that this is the only issue I've had with this router is that I have smart plugs that refuse to connect to it. I don't really know why, but like during the setup it told me that it said I might need to set up an IoT network. So I did that and it's fine now. That's the only issue I've had. But like maybe you just need that IoT network and not your actual network to go out farther, well, then you can just make the mesh nodes expand that and not the other one. So it's pretty cool. Again, I haven't set any of that up because I only have one of these. Um, my plan is if I get a house sometime soon, that's still a big if, and I need greater coverage,
I was gonna say,
I am just gonna buy another one of these, and that's my mesh node. And
yeah.
then I get Wi-Fi 7 mesh with like tri-band backhaul. It's gonna be great because whatever I buy is absolutely not gonna have wired, Ethernet throughout the home. It's gonna be some really old house that probably has asbestos.
Oh, okay, that part's probably true. I was about to say though, I don't know if you're the type of person to do this, but if I'm buying a house, I'm 100% eventually going to put Ethernet in the walls. Um,
Yeah. I mean, I might do that, or just run it on the ceiling. Maybe do that. And if I do that, I can plug that into one of these and get wired backhaul.
mhm.
Because this can do that too. So a lot of options on my $300 router that is Wi-Fi 7. So in theory, should be very future proof.
Well,
So
and to be fair, this it, any house based on what you've told me or what I've kind of gleaned, any house you're likely to buy, you're going to have this should cover it. Like just in
yeah,
terms of
yeah.
range and
I'm not
penetration.
buying a 5-bedroom house. No.
Exactly. And honestly, depending on the design of the house, even a 5 bedroom could very possibly be covered by this if it's centrally located. You might not get the
Yeah.
greatest coverage in the yards, but you know.
Yeah. I'm thinking like what might be the most likely scenario is I move and I need my networking stuff to be in a different place than some of the other networking stuff. Because the issue I have right now is the only places I can put my modem, and thus the router, is in my living room, which is where it is right now. And I don't like really love it there because now I have like this Star Wars spaceship looking thing
Yeah.
in my, in my room. It's just like whatever, it's fine, whatever. No one else comes here. Or my bedroom, and like those are the only two options. And I had my router and all this stuff in the bedroom initially, but my desk is on the complete other side of the apartment from there. So Before I was like kind of doing a thing where I had the router in there and then I had like a mesh node in here. Didn't really work all that well. So I can see like maybe if I move and I can put one router in like maybe it's in an inconvenient place somewhere, and then like wherever my desk and like all that crap ends up is where I put a mesh node or just an access point. And that's what I do. Or, maybe I move some of the networking stuff to the TV, but the TV's in a different spot than the router. And then, like, I can make it an access point there or something. But, yeah.
Okay. So you're describing my personal hell in a weird way. Because the design of my house is kind of wonky. It's long. Not particularly wide, but it was designed more as a Tetris, kind of a Tetris piece, the 4-block in straight through Tetris piece more than anything. Anyway, the thing is, it's also designed in such, or the materials that they use, there's a center wall that blocks a lot of radio signal. So, one step closer to doxing coding. Nice.
Go to Google Maps, look for the Tetris shaped house.
I mean, it's a straight line, so it's not even Tetris shaped really, but I'm just, yeah, whatever. Anyway, the thing is, if I wanted the best coverage, I would put a mesh node at kind of one end of the house and another mesh node at the other end. And, presumably they would either connect. By the way, there's also a lot of yard to cover. But presumably they would connect with a wired backhaul. Like, that would be the ideal. If not, they could connect wirelessly, but that central wall would kind of make that not ideal. Okay, so the problems get worse when you factor in that the internet comes in more at the center of the house.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to put an access point there or run a bunch of cabling to one side of the house to set up the access point. So that doesn't make a lot of sense. And also, because I want to have a NAS connected as close to the access point as possible rather than several steps down, that way I can take advantage of, well, with the review units I'm using right now, the 10 gigabit port. It's a 5 gigabit port on this one, which kind of makes me mad. Yeah, the thing is, I don't want to put the NASs in my living room because they are kind of loud and annoying.
Yeah. Yes, mine is in my living room. It is noticeable if it's quiet, because it is literally the only thing in my home now that has spinning hard drives.
Well,
all
spinning
of
hard
my
drives
old
and a fan.
Yeah, all of my old computers, they're on SSDs.
Yep.
They're pretty quiet.
Yeah, and oh man, I'll tell you that the hard drives are loud. They're unpleasant. And right now they're sitting in my office, which I'm not a fan of, but I don't have, the other options are mostly bedrooms or living room, and those aren't ideal. So it's better to have it in my office, or have them in my office. I currently have, no joke, 3 different NASs powered on in view of me at this very moment.
Yeah. So yeah, that's part of my consideration too, is like a goal could be like I move the NAS is somewhere where I don't see or hear it, and then I can put other networking crap there, like a smart hub or whatever, and like maybe that's hooked up to one of these in a mesh node, so it gets that backhaul. So it's like basically still like a very solid connection to my router, but like it could be anywhere else. So
yeah,
that's kind of where, but yeah, that's basically why I bought like this, and I'm looking at the Asus's ecosystem. Like, oh, that's pretty good. I have a lot of options here. So I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
Maybe my internet hookup will be in a closet somewhere, and I can just put everything in the closet, and I shut the door, and it's fine. Maybe, probably not.
Yeah, and I gotta say, like, the thing I really want, I just want to get a 10 gigabit switch. Or, well, a switch with a bunch of 10 gigabit ports. It maybe not a bunch, but just enough so that I can connect the access points with 10 gigabit for backhaul, and whatever NAS I'm using, like as my actual personal heavy use NAS. Plus, I need one for doing reviews, because it would be nice to be able to like hard test a NAS and make sure that 10 gigabit is actually happening. Though, to be fair, it's it's not likely that they're lying about that.
Yeah. Yeah, because the only thing I have that's like kind of an access point is I have this guy right here. I have this very sad Netgear one that I got. This is so old. This is ancient. But I got it initially because my when I was living with my family, my bedroom that was also my where my computer desk and stuff was had like the worst signal, so I had to get something.
So that's what a power over or Ethernet over power thing.
No, it's a Wi-Fi extender,
Oh, okay.
but you
That
can
was the
turn
only
off the
option.
Wi-Fi extender and make it only an access point for Ethernet. So that's what I have it set up right now as, and this was how I was getting internet on my Power Mac because that doesn't have Wi-Fi. And this is like whatever else I need to use temporarily that doesn't know what Wi-Fi is. That's what I use. So
Got it. Yeah. And I'm gonna kind of drag us back really quick to what Hoopy said. Maybe it's time to upgrade from the first gen Google Wi-Fi hockey pucks. That's what I've been using for quite a while. Honestly, if you're not doing a whole lot over your network where you have a need for really high speed, um, honestly, I'm not sure there's really that big of an upgrade necessity. Maybe you'll get a little bit better like signal if you happen to live in an area where there is a lot of conflicting network traffic. Then having access to the 6 gigahertz band is super valuable. Then there's a good reason to do it. Because getting a lot of that traffic off of the 2.4 and 5 gigahertz bands is huge. But
be
yeah,
said, it's still Wi-Fi 5. I mean, I don't like. I think this is one of those. I think networking stuff has like two extremes. There's either like, is it still working for you and you don't really care? Leave it. You're good. You're good. But it's like you want to have like all of the speed and maybe be more of a nerd and have to change more settings. Get the more expensive, more powerful router. Those are the two options here. So like, I don't know if it's still working and like you don't really need it, probably fine.
yeah,
But like I kind of I didn't need to get a new router. The Eero 6 was still okay, but like it's something that's gonna help me eventually. And in the immediate future, like right now, it is making several things slightly easier for me. So that's kind of how I justified it. It's like, yeah, I need to like. It's really annoying to go grab my phone when I need to like check an IP address. It's annoying that like everything I have is running through a hub and is kind of going on and off. There's other Eero things that was annoying me. Like the main reason I wired Ethernet from that wall all the way around like the fireplace thing to my TV was initially because my Xbox was only connecting over 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi, and this is a known issue with Xboxes, and it meant that I couldn't do local streaming, and also game downloads were really slow for no reason. And Eero did not have a setting to make it use 5 gigahertz like A normal like a normal router does. Couldn't do that. So I wired it up. Now, of course, like that has other benefits. So like I didn't do it just for that reason. Now it has hardline, so local streaming works perfectly. But it's still like that's a thing like I wouldn't have had to do necessarily if I had this or a different normal router. So it just depends on like what you need. If it's working fine right now, I don't know, leave it. Maybe in a while you'll have more like Wi-Fi 7 or 6E devices, and then you would actually get more of a material benefit from upgrading.
Yeah. So this all right. Hoopy adds some details in Discord, so I'll hit those in a second. But I will say a, a lot of this comes down to, in my mind, 3 questions. One, what is your actual like internet connection? Because if you are getting up to 1 gigabit per second, chances are almost anything Wi-Fi, well, even a Wi-Fi 4 can probably be okay for you. But Wi-Fi 5 is probably the highest you need if you're at 1 gigabit per second. If you're higher than 1 gigabit per second as an internet connection, it might vary. But the reality is almost all networking hardware is like the highest ports most things have at Wi-Fi 6 and below is 1 gigabit per second. If you're not going over that number, you probably don't have any need to get any higher stuff anyway. Unless, and this is where we get into the other 2 exceptions. One of them, of course, being, do you have crazy high congestion in your area? Like network congestion, or like wireless congestion. Or like
Right, not car traffic.
Right. Or bronchial issues. Anyway, yeah, if you have obviously like tons of stuff competing for 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz, then yes, you'll obviously get some benefits from other option, or from having access to 6 gigahertz, or some of the newer technologies that are in Wi-Fi 6 are also beneficial, just for like penetration through walls and being able to like do channel hopping, things like that. So that can matter, but I think the benefits of that sometimes get oversold. It's there and it does matter, but 9 times out of 10 it's more of a, if you are in a situation where Wi-Fi traffic is absolutely abysmal, then maybe you'll get some benefit. If you're mostly okay with your Wi-Fi traffic and it's just not fast enough, or it's just disappointing in range, the Wi-Fi version probably matters less than the physical build of the router. Not to say you shouldn't upgrade to a higher Wi-Fi version, then just it might not be about the Wi-Fi version. It's probably more just the antennas on the router's crap.
Yeah.
Which Google Wi-Fi, the antennas aren't not that great. They're okay. They're fine, but they're not great.
Right. To a certain extent, this is also just physics. Like the same thing we talk about with phone cameras is like, yeah, you just like physically can't get better in that compact package. And my era was a little cube thing with internal antennas, and this is a big thing with really big antennas. So I'm not scientific enough to know how much that's helping, but I know it is, because that's just how that works.
Yeah. So the other exception in all of this, and this one is, to me, like, I think most people will not have this concern, but if you're in a special case where you do, all of a sudden it becomes a good reason to upgrade everything. But if you have internal network traffic that is going to be high speed, for most people this means you have a NAS with a like 5 or 10 gigabit port, and therefore you can move files really fast. At this point, yes, you're gonna want to upgrade everything. All of a sudden you want everything to be connected on high speed ports. You want Wi-Fi 7 or whatever the highest thing your devices will be able to support. Ideally, you just future proof by buying whatever the highest thing you can get is. Yeah, and there are other things besides a NAS that might involve high internal network traffic, but that's usually about it. Like it's a short list.
Like mine was the local game streaming. Like that's a lot of bandwidth.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and strictly speaking, for you, that's less about the bandwidth and more about cutting latency, which notably Wi-Fi 7 actually does some stuff to cut latency. So it's worth it to go to Wi-Fi 7 if you can. And also just having higher speed wire can also, or not, sorry, I'm implying the wire is higher speed, but no, having a wider pipe by going to like 5 or 10 gigabit per second Ethernet does make a big difference there too sometimes. Just because it has a higher clock cycle, so it can move the data with less of a delay between each tick.
Yeah. So a lot of like pretty happy with it so far. I'll report back in a while because I don't think there's really any reviews of this. Maybe I should write like a short review.
I was actually just thinking I need to reach out to Asus and get this set up.
Yeah. Yeah, because this is pretty new. But yeah, it's working well so far. Except the IoT thing, I had to set up the other network for that, and of course, like every smart switch or whatever makes it like a giant pain in the ass to change what network it's connected to. But that's not the router's fault. So yeah, I'll keep using it, see how it works. Again, I'm not really pushing this that much. This is mostly future proofing, and whenever I move, it gives me more options for the setup. Yeah, so far so good. So like if you need a Wi-Fi 7 upgrade and you're okay with like maybe not a super intuitive user experience, but like one where it's not trying to upsell you, maybe get this one. Again, I'll report back. A couple of days is not a good review.
Yeah.
But
now you're
so
just
far
waiting
so good.
for problems.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, pretty cool. Definitely interested in trying I do like the idea of Asus kind of just letting like every router be a mesh, even things that are just like normal router. Like hey, I saw one video where someone was showing off like, yeah, this is like my old router. Now it can just be like a mesh, like it was it's not like necessarily an extender. Like Eero kind of works the same way, but I guess because the Asus is like more interesting, I guess, because you wouldn't really think it does. I guess is what makes it interesting to me. I don't know.
So
I just think it's funny.
One thing that it made me furious once I realized it. TP-Link. All of their okay, so this starts out sounding good. All of their Deco products, which are their mesh network products, all of them work between each other. So you can have two different models of Deco units and they'll mesh just fine. Come to find out, TP-Link also has mesh technology for its other routers in the Archer series. So you can use an Archer with basically range extenders, and it creates a mesh network. However, the Archers will not work with the Decos. They will not mesh together. And apparently, I think one or two of the Archers actually will work together, but they are really only designed to work with the range extenders. So they have two different mesh technologies that are incompatible. And I think that is so stupid.
Yeah, I don't understand TP-Link's smart home, because they've had like 2 smart home ecosystems for a long time, and I think they have a third brand now that like they
they
were
have a few
setting up.
brands.
Yeah, it's like, guys, I don't know what you're doing over there, but it's not working.
No.
Um, Also, this is I also think it'd be really funny if Apple started making routers again.
Oh, geez. I kind of hope they don't. We don't. I don't think we need them.
I mean, I I would like them to try, but I know if they tried, it would just be Arrow, but slightly less annoying. I think that's how it would end up, because they would also not let you do like a bunch of crazy configuration stuff. Um, but yeah.
So, believe it or not, we planned on this being a quick throwaway topic that would take us just a few minutes, and we've been on it for 50 minutes.
Yeah, I'm pretty tired now.
Yeah.
I had my fill.
So, Corbin, anything you want to pitch or mention?
Yeah, my other router I bought.
Whack.
We're gonna talk about all this again.
I will murder.
That's it.
No, we'll probably end up continuing this in a little bit in Discord, but yeah, so I think we are gonna wrap it up here though. So thanks everyone for coming by, hanging out, being part of the conversation. I will be back this weekend for game streams. However, gonna be doing late schedule because I have plans Friday night that will probably mean I'm not awake in the morning. So, yeah, gonna be doing a late schedule. I do not know when the start time's gonna be, but probably I'm gonna ballpark like 3 or 4 in the afternoon my time. So basically sometime after lunch, effectively. And otherwise, back for RambleCast next week on Wednesday. The same should be, or the usual should be true then. So huge thanks to supporters of the channel: David, Diablo, Austin, Carson, and Kirby Mermaid. Y'all are awesome. If you'd like to support the channel, there are links down below to Cash App, Streamlabs, and Patreon. And yeah, that about covers it. So, again, we'll see you next week, and I hope you all have an excellent rest of this week. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.